Good afternoon. It's October 13th, 2024. We're critiquing the news. The article on your screen is from the Sunday Mail and it's titled Public Not Keen on a Republic. The opening paragraph reads, "Support for an Australian Republic has fallen to a lower level under King Charles than during the reign of Queen Elizabeth. Exclusive new survey results show." That could be in part because of the Great Awakening and people understanding just how unpleasant some of these elite European families are. However, I don't have high hopes for that because that's still only about the same 10% of the population that it was way back in 2020. Now, a lot of the article explores the personalities of the existing royal family, and none of the article accurately describes how our constitutional monarchy is intended to work, or indeed what's being misapplied from it in the current environment, the current political machinations behind the scene in the running of Australia. Apparently, though, 45% of poll respondents said Australia should remain a constitutional monarchy and 22% said they were unsure. So not a majority either for or against. However, if people were properly informed, then we would be looking for a republic, but it would not be the republic that the Australian Republic movement is pushing. The only sort of republic that's ever been proven to work is the American tripartite system. This has three branches of government. It has the executive, who is the elected president and his appointed heads of department. It has the Congress, which is the House and the Senate, who are the representatives of the people and the states, and it has the judiciary. And each of these branches is independent from the other. They form a tripod system, with each being dependent on the other and each being balanced by the other. We don't have that, which is a massive weakness. Additionally, the US Republic system has, from the wisdom of the Founding Fathers and their experience with experimenting with their system in their first few years of their nation, their Bill of Rights, which is why the United States is under such an attack from the globalists at the moment. It's why we're seeing so much mis and disinformation from the American media. It's why the Democrats are flooding the Republic with an untold millions of immigrants, illegal immigrants, and it's why people have been deliberately dumbed down in so many different ways so that people just don't really know what they've got to lose. But unless they can bring the American Republic down, and it can't be healed by visionaries such as Trump and his team, then there is little hope for the rest of humanity. If America can get its nation back from this Gramscian left-wing attack that's been unfolding for the last 60-odd years, then there is hope for us. And at that point would be when we should look at the possibility of emulating the American system, but definitely not engaging in the system that the Australian Republic movement is promoting. Now, the Australian Republic movement said the Republic cause was not over, but there was a lot of education needed on the issue. Recent Australian Republic movement research showed 40% of Aussies are actually unaware that Charles III is our head of state. Well, a lot of people think Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is our head of state, when in fact there's not even a mention of a Prime Minister in our Constitution, and nor is there a mention of political parties. The way the political system in Australia is intended to work is the people elect representatives. Now, each representative, each member of parliament, the lower house, is intended to represent the will of his people. And he is to take that will, their decisions on all the issues that affect that region, to the parliament. And as a member of a group, the parliamentarian puts those issues forward as legislation to the king, or the monarch, when it was the Queen. And that king or queen then agrees that legislation should be put in place, and then the legislation is put in place. That's called royal assent. Now, because the royal family are busy and because they're not what they once were, that gets outsourced to a Governor-General. And this is where part of the problem arises, because the Governor-General now is a political appointee. It's not a person that's selected by the monarch to represent the monarch, which is what it was intended to be. Now, the Republic movement goes on with, there is a real disengagement with an understanding that in fact Australia is a constitutional monarchy with a head of state who inherits the role by birthright. They continue, we have found over the years that once people engage following that question, their response is, well, that doesn't sound right. That's an artefact of the lack of education, the misinformation that's being pushed out in our schools, or the disinformation by not teaching it, which means that people don't understand how the system is supposed to work. So yes, it is a birthright thing. No, it's suboptimal, but yes, it is fairly stable as long as the royal family is stable and responsible people. And Queen Elizabeth, for whatever faults and failings she may have or have been alleged to have had, was pretty legitimate in the way she administered the various nations within the Commonwealth. We can't really expect that from any sort of political appointee, and in fact what we saw with the Governor-General at the time during COVID was that a blatant abdication of his responsibilities to bring a government that was abusing the law, which the Liberal Party was at the time, and which the state Labor parties would do, Labor governments were doing at the time, which the governors of each state were meant to address. They all abdicated from their responsibilities in that area because they were all political appointees, and they were all acting against the will of the monarch, assuming the monarch had been operating fully within the legal structure that had been established by the people's representatives over a period of time. And again, it's been decades, possibly even longer, since the representatives that we elect have represented our will as opposed to the will of the party that they're elected on the platform of. Now let's just go across to the Australian Republic Movement's website and have a look at what they're pushing. So what are the basics? An Australian will hold the role of head of state, and that is perfectly possible under an American-style tripartite system. We technically have that at the moment with the Governor-General. The problem with that, again, to repeat myself, is that the Governor-General should be appointed by the monarch, not recommended to the monarch by the Australian political parties. Two, the Australian people will choose the person who becomes head of state through an election using the compulsory preferential voting system used for the House of Representatives. Now, the compulsory preferential voting system is very much a suboptimal system, because it can mean that even though your first preference is Party A, but Party B gets in because you were forced to put Party B as your second preference, and Party C and D and so on, and Party C and D directed their preferences when they dropped out to Party B, even though you would have preferred Party A. So a first past the post system is superior for getting the candidate that the majority of people within an electorate choose. The compulsory preferential voting system keeps the two main branches of the uni party in power. And I say two main branches, Labor and Liberal, because obviously you have the two sub-branches being the Greens and Teals, and there may even be others after the amount of subversion that we've seen since 2020. Now, three, candidates will be nominated by the federal, state and territory parliaments. What a dreadful idea. Candidates will be nominated by politicians. It'd be far better if we had the capacity for emergent leaders. In the case of the US, the Republicans in name only, the rhinos, as opposed to the MAGA Republicans, being extremely reluctant to endorse Trump, even though he's a clear favourite with the people. To continue on three, as our elected representatives, they will be charged with finding candidates free from political interference and mandates, people who could proudly represent us on the world stage. As if political parties that are captured and controlled by the globalists at the World Economic Forum and United Nations are going to find someone that they approve of who's free of political interference and mandates. Like them, that person would be just as bribable or blackmailable or ideologically corruptible as they need him or her to be to achieve the objectives that they want to impose on the free people of Australia. The free people of Australia. Yeah, what am I saying? The people who should be free in Australia. The head of state will act on the advice of the government. And this again is a flawed system, because it's the head of state's role in the constitutional monarchy not to act on the advice of the government, but to act on the advice of the government if it's in line with the will of the people, which the monarch should be across. Obviously hard when they're busy doing other things. And a properly elected president in a proper tripartite republic system would have that connection to the people to be able to act on the advice of the government, and he would he or she would be able to veto any government legislation that defied the will of the people. He would also have obviously the ability to issue executive orders on certain areas relating to the administration of the law, where that was appropriate, where there was a gridlock between the parties, whoever they may be, holding power in the Congress. Now, the head of state will hold limited powers to ensure the smooth functioning of government and parliament. This is a way of curtailing the power of the existing Governor-Generals, who have the power to prorogue the parliament, to make them all go home until something can be worked out, such as an election, or to dissolve a parliament, such as Sir John Kerr did when he got rid of the ineffably corrupt globalist called Gough Whitlam. So the tripartite equivalent has the capacity for the president to not only veto laws, but to use his executive order power to ensure the smooth functioning of the government and parliament where necessary. 6, the head of state will be accountable to the people and will serve 5-year terms with a maximum of 2 terms. This seems not too bad, except it'd probably be better as a 4-year term, because 5 is just a little bit long. If you get a terrible president or presidential combination such as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, 4 years is a little bit more manageable, and additionally you need the right of voter recall tied in with that, which obviously isn't a federal prerogative in the US, but it is in some states, and it's a very good system, so that when the majority of citizens in a state or nation become so disgusted with the behaviour of a leader that they can move to have that person face an election to see if the majority actually want him gone. And that would certainly have been the case with Biden had that facility existed in the US. 7, the Prime Minister will be written into the Constitution of head of government and be charged with the role of administering the nation and setting the policy agenda. This is an absolutely dreadful idea. In fact, the role of administering the nation should be the executive branch in a proper tripartite system, and setting the policy agenda should come from the people, because the MPs in Congress, the senators in the Congress, are there to represent the will of the people, not the will of the political parties, which is where Australia has gone so far wrong, which is why we're in economic collapse at this point in time, because it's very easy with our system for it to be captured by people that have little to no interest in the well-being of the Australian people. 8, oaths and affirmations will be sworn to Australia, its people, and the Constitution and the laws of our nation. When in fact, the oaths and affirmations just need to be sworn to a properly written constitution, very similar to the US Constitution. There's a lot we can learn from that. It is the best possible system that's existed. It's a shame that it's been corrupted to the extent it has. It wasn't really written with electronic communication and the dumbing down of an entire population in mind, but with the lessons that we could learn from a reconstituted United States, then we would have the potential to have the best possible system. It's not going to come from an organisation like the Australia Republican Movement, because they are basically of the woke left, and will probably have a lot of drinks with the people from the Labor Liberal Uni Party, none of whom should be in our parliament or deciding something as important as constitutional change in Australia.